Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Karibuni sana. My name is Kamande Esther. If this is your first time, thank you so much for clicking onto this channel, and please thank whoever sent you this link. If this is not your first time, Karibuni sana, welcome back, and thank you so much for making this home. And may God bless you. On today's in today's episode, I've been thinking. I was just trying to think about what I wanted to say and what I wanted to talk about today, and a thought came to my mind about. By the way, the most recent video was a couple of Mondays ago. Last week we didn't have a Monday. We had a Monday, but we didn't have an episode for Mondays with Kamande. So during that week, I had a struggle, a really huge struggle. I kept thinking, oh God, I had said, one of my goals was to be consistent, to make sure there's no Monday that I'm missing, to make sure we have content every Monday. Here's to consistency in 2023. And consistency is one of the goals that I have for 2023. Adulting can happen. But a few things were, the way you might plan something out and the way you think something is going to plan out or play out is not how it does. And so when I kept thinking of when I need to go, when we need to record for that Monday, things are not adding up, time wasn't, it was either I'm not available or Kibi is not available. But I'm saying all this to mean or to say that it was a struggle for me to think that another Monday is going to come, or Monday is going to get here and we won't have any video or any specific either a video or a blog. And so I kept struggling, thinking, God, I'm really failing on my goals. I had said I wanted to be consistent. I had said I wanted to make sure I'm producing, or we're creating content every Monday. But then here we are, and we don't have anything for that Monday. And a part of me was really sad. But then I remember in that state or in that moment, and God was like, no, but I need you to handle, and I need you to take care of something else. But the assignment was, or whatever God wanted me to do, or whatever I needed to do, was time sensitive, number one. And secondly, it was an emergency. So God is like, no, I need you to handle that. And the question God was asking me was, are you going to fully obey me? Are you going to fully obey me in whatever I'm asking you to do? Or will you consider, or will you pick content side, or will you pick I'm trying to put it like this. I was now in between picking and choosing between obeying God and on this other end, making sure that I don't let the channel down, or I don't let you down, or let myself down, or let my goals down, because I'm a planner. I like having things playing out or rolling out in a specific way or in a certain way. And so in that particular moment, I was caught up between, should I just, let go of my plan and let go of how I had scheduled my day or my week would be, or should I just obey God and do what He wants me to do, and then we can figure out content later. Well, because there was no video on Monday, you can as well guess what I chose. Of course, I chose to obey God, and that's one of the decisions I've made sure that I stick with. That whenever God asks me to do something, whether it makes sense at that particular time or not, the goal is to obey, and obey quickly. Whether it makes sense or not, the sense will come and catch up later. And it got me thinking about the struggles we go through in our day-to-day lives, where you have to choose between pleasing God and, pleasing people, quote unquote, and people here starts with you. Pleasing yourself, doing something that is pleasant to you, or doing something that is pleasant or pleases other people at the expense of God. And I told God, you know what, the next video we're doing, I'll have to talk about it, or I'll have to share that and share a lesson I learned. And it's how to overcome people pleasing. And people pleasing is quite a wide topic. It's a topic that I've actually included in my book as well. It's a struggle that many people go through. People pleasing is it's something that once you have overcome, you feel like bags and kilograms have been lifted off your back. And it's also something that if you do not overcome, it could really cripple you and limit you. And I was just thinking through people pleasing, and the first person that came to my mind was King Saul. And King Saul was in 1 Samuel chapter 15 from verse 1. You can read that story, that part of his story. And in this account, as told by the Bible, God commands King Saul, tells him, "Where do you live? Go, I'm sending you to the Amalekites. The Amalekites were enemies of the children of Israel, and God commands King Saul to go and kill everyone, from the king to every man, to everyone. Like, do not leave anything, including chicken, including cows. Kill everything, and do not, just burn up everything and just destroy everything." And that was God's judgment. And Saul had to fulfill that, and he had to do that. But what does King Saul do? He decides, you know what, let's just go. We will obey God. Of course, he took his people, his soldiers, and they went. But when they got there, these guys were just, it's like they were shopping. So they get there and they see, there's a fat cow here, there's a fat ox here, there's a king. They did not even kill the king, but they were just going and picking things that looked really good according to them and to their eyesight. They'd see a fat cow, and then they keep it candle. So they went back with all these things. And remember God's instruction. God's instruction was, do not leave anything, destroy everything, from the king to the child, to livestock, to everything. Just make sure you destroy everything. But Saul and his people decided, you know what, tunarudi na hizi vitu zote. And they went back, and they actually spared the life of the king. And so when they went, Saul, according to him, he was doing something that made sense to him. He was doing something that made sense to him, or whatever he did at that particular moment made sense to him. He had forgotten what God had instructed him to do, and he partially obeyed God. And when he did what he did, God did not even go to King Saul directly. He went to Samuel, the prophet, and he told Samuel what King Saul had done. And God was like, you know what, by the way, I regret choosing King Saul as a king, and I've actually rejected him. I've rejected him as king, and I have someone else that I'm going to raise as a king. And I'm telling this story and I'm highlighting these moments because for me it really stood out. It really stood out that chapter began with an instruction from God, but then it ends with God regretting. He regretted a choice he had made. He regretted picking someone as king. The chapter begins, or that story begins with Saul being able to hear from God and Saul being able to receive instructions from God. But the chapter ends with Saul being rejected by God. And for me, that really broke my heart. It really, it made me shiver. It made me so scared, not scared in a terrifying way, but it made my reverence for God and the instructions of God really stand out. Because for me, I kept thinking, the greatest loss that I could ever think of, and one of the things that terrifies me the most, is living my life without God. You get to a place where you've known God for you've known God. You keep getting, the more you get to know God, the more he becomes tangible, the more he becomes real to you. And the experiences that you keep having with God as you're growing in your relationship with God, they make you feel, like you get to a place, like we talked about, the point of no return. You get to a place you're like, I can't imagine my life without God. And so for you to be in a situation where God rejects you, and you see God was rejecting him as king, he was rejecting him as, in the office of a king. You can be called to do something. God can actually equip you to do something and place you in a position where he's called you to be, to be a pastor, to be a business person, or to do something for him, your assignment and your purpose in God. But just because you choose not to obey him, either you delay obeying God, because delayed obedience is actually disobedience. You either delay in obeying those instructions that God gives you, or you find yourself struggling between struggling with complete obedience, where God is telling you to do something, A to Z, but where you look at these instructions that God is giving and you're like, oh, you know what, I can only do A to C, A to M, A to and partial obedience is not. It's disobedience. And when God now reports, quote unquote, when God is telling Prophet Samuel what King Saul has done, Samuel starts grieving, and I think Samuel really loved Saul, because he starts grieving and his heart is heavy for what God had said about Saul. So he goes to Saul. And when he goes to Saul, first of all, is not apologetic about what he has done. And in his mind, he had forgotten the complete instruction that Samuel had told him. And so he starts saying, oh, have you seen, oh, servant of God, have you seen what we've done? We've come back with the best of the best from the Amalekites. And so, and Samuel is like, but God said you should destroy everything. Why are you coming back? Why did you come back with sheep? Why did you come back with cows? And why did you spare the king of the Amalekites? And Saul is like, oh, we saw we come with them so that we can offer them a sacrifice unto God. And you see, that's the thing with us. We tend to make these excuses for our actions, and we try to Christianize them. We try to sanctify them. You are sanctifying your disobedience, where God has told you to do something, but because you've not done that and you've done something completely different, you begin. It's like you're covering it up. You're like, oh, I did this because it would please God, or I did this because it's a good thing. God has told you don't go a particular place or don't do a particular thing, and you find yourself doing it and going there, and you're like, oh, but see, I went there and I was even telling them about God, and I was telling them about ABCD, and you're trying to make excuses for it, because that's what Saul did. He was trying to make to give excuses as to why they did what they did, and for them, he was saying he came back with the sheep and the cows and the king. He came back with it so that they could offer that as burnt offering. I remember back in the time they would offer sacrifices, offerings as sacrifice to God, and Samuel was telling him, you know what, obedience is better than sacrifice, and that's where that phrase comes from. If you've been wondering where obedience is better than sacrifice comes from, it's in 1 Samuel 15. And Samuel is telling him, you know what, obedience is better than sacrifice. And because of what you've done, God has rejected you as king over Israel, and he's choosing someone else. And so at that time, even when Saul was told that, he still didn't repent. He still did not run to God and tell God, and acknowledge what he had done. He started blaming other people. And when now Samuel told him that God had rejected him, Saul now begins to repent and tells Samuel, oh, nipeleke basi, just accompany me, let me go and worship God. I'm sorry for what I did. I shouldn't have listened to the people. I was afraid that the people would be displeased with me. He was afraid about the people's opinions. He was afraid that the people would be unhappy with him if he did not allow them to do what they did. And the question now in my mind when I was reading that story, or when I was thinking about that story, was like, why would he, as the king of Israel, you're the king, I mean, no one can tell you what to do other than God. So why would you, a whole king, why would you consider what other people are saying? Why would you consider the people that are supposed to be obeying you and obeying the commands? And a king makes decrees. A king does not negotiate. A king makes decrees. Your position and authority as a king is to make decrees, is to say something. And when the king says something and speaks, people are supposed to obey you and follow the commands, whether it makes sense or not. And I think he had forgotten his place as king. He had forgotten the authority he walks in, because in my mind, I'm thinking, if he had known, or if he remembered who he was as king, he would have said, no, God said we destroy everything, so everything has to be destroyed. And they would have come back and he would still be king. His son Jonathan would have, like the throne or that royal mantle on him wouldn't have been taken away from him. But he listened to the people. And that's where most of us get caught up. Like when God has called you to do something, or even in your business, or even in your life, in your marriages, in your friendships, you find that God will tell you to do something, but because you're afraid of what people around you are going to say, either the people around you, you yourself, probably it's an instruction that is quite difficult to follow through with, or the people around you, the friends that you're keeping. And that's why I usually say it's important to know and to be careful about the people that surround you, because the people that surround you can either propel and help you and push you towards fulfilling the destiny and the assignment that God has called you to fulfill, or they can hold you back. And the question is, what are you going? Like the people around you, what do they influence you to do? Are they people that influence you to obey God? Are they people who, when you say God has told you, like God, when God tells you do something, are the people around you the kind who will tell you, has God said we are running with that vision or that assignment? Or are they people who are like, Mungu amesema, are you sure it's God who said it? Are you sure it's, And it boils even down to intimate relationships. Is the person you're married to, is the person you're dating, or is the person is your best friend someone who can push you, or is it someone who pushes you towards fulfilling what God has called you to fulfill? And then in whatever area you're in, let's say let me use myself as an example. In this content space, sometimes the struggle is like what I went through the other day, like thinking and deciding, I've said on my channel that I'm going to be consistent and create content every other day. But then God comes with an instruction like, no, I need you to do this. And whatever he wants me to do is going to affect creating content. So the question is, who am I going to listen to, and what am I going to follow through with? Am I going to listen to the voices in my head and say, Pana, we need to do this content, we need to have a video for Monday? Or am I going to obey God? And you see, if I want to Christianize, quote unquote, if I want to sanctify my decisions, I will, it's easy for me to say, but you see, the content I'm creating is content inspired by the word of God. It's content that, it's Christian content, and I can easily do that and come and then disobey God and, put God on hold and tell him, let me just go and do this, because the content we're doing is content that glorifies you. I'll be right back. But then you see, when I do that, the challenge with doing that, or the risk that you face doing that, is that you will be doing things without God. Like, God will not be involved in what you're doing for as long as you're disobeying him. God is only going to be involved, and his presence is going to be in what he has called you to do. God's presence is within, it's in what he has asked you to do. Anything that he has not asked you to do, his presence is not involved in it. And for me, I would rather not have anything going on this channel if it means I have to come here and God is not here, and God is not in the content that I'm releasing, or is not in whatever I'm doing. So if God says don't do it, or if he says do it, I'll do it. If he says don't do it, then I'm not going to do it. Does it mean it's going to be easy? It's not going to be easy. And then you'll have to, face questions like, hi, why? Because I remember on Monday, I had a few people asking me, we've not seen a link. We've not seen you sharing a link. We've not seen you posting about a video for Monday. And I'm like, no. We didn't have anything for Monday, for this Monday, but next Monday, probably we might have something. And that's the thing with God. It's about just listening to him and being able to discern and pick what he's asking you to do, to be sensitive to his heart, to know that whatever he's asking you to do is time sensitive and it has a purpose behind it. And if you consider other people's opinions about what God is calling you to do, if you consider what other people are saying, if you listen to what other people are saying, you will do what you want to do without the presence of God. And if Moses prayed and told God, if your presence is not with us, please don't let us live here. And he was talking about leaving Egypt and, going into the wilderness and going to Canaan. And he was like, we don't want to live if we have to go without your presence. And in 2023 and beyond, if you're going to survive any season that comes in your life, then the presence of God is the main thing that you need in your life. But you cannot have the presence of God if you disobey him. You cannot walk in the presence of God if you're disobedient, if you're considering other people. And let me tell you, these people didn't die for you. These people are not God. These people are not going to answer your prayers. These people are not going to give you long life. These people they're dependent on God the same way you're depending on God. And so if you keep considering other people, and if you keep considering people's opinions, you're not going to go far. And you're going to do a lot of things without the presence of God. And anything that doesn't have the presence of of God. And anything that doesn't have God being involved in it doesn't see the day of light. It dies off. And that's how you now start, feeling frustrated, and you're living a life with no purpose and with no meaning. But yeah, I hope this random story time encourages you to just be sensitive to God, and just before you make a decision or before you do anything, just ask yourself, do I have the presence of God with me? And ask God, are you in this? Because if he's in it, it's going to succeed. If he's not in it, it's not going to succeed. Trust me. And whenever you're thinking about doing something, forget people. Forget them. Forget people. Just let them catch up. Let them. It will make sense to them later on when they're watching what God is doing in your life. But forget people. Forget people. Choose pleasing God over pleasing them. And God says, if you want to please me, obey what I ask you to do. And if for God to know that you love him, then you have to obey what he asks you to do, because obedience is better than sacrifice. And I will see you in my next video. Let me go and obey God. Until next time, bye.